Good evening, good morning, guys. My name is Samir, and of course, today we are going to discuss about evaluating impact. This is part of 2.8 in the CPTD certification exam model, and I must be super honest. This is the first time I'm recording and doing anything in these lines. So please pardon me, but it was a huge learning experience. I'm trying to do my best and not necessarily got enough time this week. So today on a Sunday, this is my smaller attempt in explaining evaluating impact. So today we'll be covering uh, so, yeah, we'll be covering three major aspects of evaluating impact, and these are based, of course, on the capability model and based on the TD-BOK. Of course, TD-BOK is more exhaustive, but these are the three major focus areas if we purely look at the certification exam. So I have created two separate videos. So the first one is about models and methods to evaluate learning and talent development solutions. And I'll literally cover this entire video on that. The second part of the video would deal with creating data collection tools and identifying and defining individual and organizational metrics. The reason why I created in two models, of course, I tried a bit size, not necessarily hugely bit size, but yeah, guess didn't have much time. But models and methods, I think it's more vast than creating data collection tools and identifying organizational metrics. So I think it deserves a separate model or a separate video altogether. So without further ado, let's deep dive in models and methods to evaluate. So what are the importance of evaluating impact? I think, and I know, like at least for our group, most of us are already in the profession. This doesn't require any reiteration. We all know there needs to be always an evaluation of the impact. Otherwise, it would be more of executing and a support function whenever everybody comes and says, hey, we need a training, and we said, okay, we'll go ahead and do that without understanding why we need it and what was the impact. Was it good or bad? So of course it secures stakeholder support and trust. Either you're part of a training function with your cross-functional partners, or even you're an entrepreneur and owning a training company or an organization. In this case, that would be your clients, but you need to secure support and trust. And that's the reason why you need to have evaluating impact. It will check the consistency. That's the second part of learning results with business opportunity. So whether somebody, whatever knowledge transfer we have done, whether that's consistent. And there are different school of thoughts which suggest that we should have a 30, 60, and a 90-day evaluation, because just post the training, everybody says it's wonderful, right? But once somebody goes to the on-job work after 30 or 60 days, that particular participant might come up with a different perspective. So yeah, whether it's a consistent learning results, that's the second part. The third one, it validates performance gaps and learning needs. I think we in the training domain all know a lot of times, uh, at least the cross-functional partners or operations team suggest that training is the answer or the solution for everything, right? So that not necessarily is the case. So we need to understand where exactly is the performance gaps and whether that deserves or requires a training in the first place. Because of course, there's a difference between training, between feedback, and of course, with coaching. The last importance, of course, would be evaluating learning impact to develop whether training was the solution or not, exactly taking on the previous cue and showcasing, hey, this was the need analysis or the gap that we identified. We did the training, and this is the data of 4 weeks or 60 days. And of course, whether it's impactful or not, and also just bear in mind that training is not an event, it's a journey, right? So if something is not improving, that's where the refresher training and stuff like that comes in. Okay, let's go a little bit into models. And when you say the models of evaluation, first let's understand what's the purposes. What are the different purposes of evaluation? So what I mean, I have done some sort of studies. What I understand that one way to document whether the investment in training is achieving desired outcomes is the evaluation part, right? Because the programs are based on objectives, whether they might accomplish within the time frame. So it will be based on objectives specifying what they must accomplish, and of course if it's within the time frame. So if you see, there are seven, close to seven purposes I did mention. So I've researched on the TD work and few other courses. So determining business impact, whether it has the return on investment. So we have heard this training ROI, right? So whether it's impacting business, what are the objectives, determining whether the objectives of the solution were met. Instructional strategies, whether the content needs some sort of changes, or is the instructional strategy good. Performance assistance, be it with the effectiveness or be it assessing the performance with some sort of test. Facilitator feedback, providing feedback to the facilitator, providing feedback to the participants, and learner retention, rather, assessing the on-job environment to support learning retention. So these are the different purposes of evaluation. And if we go to the next slide, we'll start with the first model. And this is Ralph Tyler's goal attainment model. Now, Ralph Tyler, if I do recollect correctly, whatever I've researched, this model came after 8 years, 8 years of studies. And I think it's University of Chicago. That's where he has done that. So this is one of the like old models, but it's also sometimes called objective centered model. So what it happens, the basis, uh, it's it's a model, or it's the basis for most common models in curriculum design, development, and evaluation. So when defining the objectives of learner experience, Tyler gives emphasis on the input of students, the community, and the subject content. So Tyler's model poses us four questions. What objectives should the learners achieve? What learning activities would assist learners to achieve these objectives? How should the curriculum be organized? And how should learner achieve be measured? So yeah, there is probably a little bit of grammatical error, and I'll change it when I send the slides. So that was Ralph Tyler, but there are a lot of other models which came and which I'm going to discuss in some time from now, like the Kirkpatrick, the Phillips ROI. But like, why measurement is important in the first place? Because while selecting the measurement process, we need to consider the nature of the solution, the characteristics of the learners, the focus of the outcome. So not necessarily it's a one size fits all, right? But at the same time, measurement is a standard or a process by which we can evaluate the standard. And the evaluation process, we should have or determine the outcomes or the goals or objectives of the solution. So the process is using the assessment data. It can develop an evaluation design and strategies, select and construct measurement tools. It will analyze data and report data. So most evaluation process, like I mentioned, begin with determining the outcomes. I always think of it, I think based on my previous experience in sales and marketing, is again a huge focus on return on investment. Not necessarily that's right, as you'll discover in few other methodologies later. But yeah, how I mean, we have to focus on the outcome and have the goal in mind, and then you break it down to micro levels and what are the different process, how you achieve or attain that goal. uh, let's understand a little bit in more perspective. So and this actual the flow of the presentation, honestly speaking, I've gone through the TD book, and based on the certification exam path, I'm going through that. So yeah, Not necessarily I have listed all the models together and then went into the assessment parts, but yeah, I'm just following the path. So formative versus summative assessments. I think we might have heard this, and few of us probably did not hear it. Like when I was in the training profession, after a few years, I came to know of this concept. But yeah, I think this is fairly explained here. I tried to do justice. Of course, there are a lot of crowdsourcing documents or resources that I've got gathered from the internet. So the purpose of formative evaluation is to improve the draft learning program and increase the likelihood that it will achieve its objectives. So too many words, in simple ways, when you're creating the or in this case, the assessments and uh, the entire training curriculum, so to say. There are different ways to do formative assessment. It can be a interview the subject matter expert of the product. It can be a beta testing. It can be a pilot testing. But that happens, if you notice carefully, it's an assessment for learning. I mentioned it. What is it? As opposed to summative assessment, because formative happens when the entire thing is created. Summative is when the training is delivered. So it's about the value of the program. And when it says, what is it? It's an assessment of learning. So formative was an assessment for learning, and summative assessment is an assessment of learning. And the remaining part of the chart is self-explanatory, and any which ways, I'm going to send this slide altogether. Let's now go deeper into Kirkpatrick's level of evaluation. And all these names, my pronunciation can be extremely wrong. And like I've heard in few people saying in different ways. But yeah, I think this is one of the models that we have uh, at least learned pretty early from the training career. At least I've done it. And always, I was always hearing this level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And I don't know, without the right word in mind, I think sometimes it's abused. So everybody, like even when I interviewed any trainers for our team, everybody uses this Kirkpatrick's level of evaluation. So it's a very well defined model. But if everybody and every organization is doing that, not necessarily everybody is doing it correctly. So of course, it has 4 levels, starting with level 1, that's the reaction. Level 2 is learning. Level 3 is behavior. And level 4 is results. And since this is one of the key pillar of all the models, I've invested a little bit more than 1 or 2 sliders. So we'll discuss each of the levels in one slide. But before that, what's the relationship between the levels? So each subsequent is predicted upon doing evaluation at a lower level. So a level 3 will only be of marginal use if a level 2 evaluation is not conducted. So in other words, if we don't conduct level 2 evaluation, not necessarily will do justice in level 3 and overall assessing the entire training program and assessing each levels. So level 1 is to improve the learning environment. That's reaction for you. Level 2 is improve knowledge or skill transfer. Level 3 is check performance environment. And level 4 is check requirements, systems, and processes. So reaction, as I said, like this deserves, the entire model deserves more than 1 or 2 slides. I'm so sorry if this is not bit size because I didn't have the time. But yeah, I can do editor and cut the videos, but that's a different discussion altogether. So bear with me in me speaking for a few more minutes. Reaction, what they thought, and when I said they, these are the trainees, what they thought and felt about training. So it can be how well did the participants like the training program. We all know by this time, like this is the survey, the smile cards. So the participants' opinion about the training processes and results, that's level 1 for your reaction. Level 2 is learning, the resulting increase in knowledge or capability. So what knowledge and techniques did the participants gain from the training program? and that's to what degree the learning actually took place. And this we can take it by means of assessments. So level one, by means of smile sheets or surveys, the facilitator survey, the trainer's satisfaction survey. Level two learning is by means of assessment. We can gauge that. Level three is behavior. To what extent of behavior and capability improvement and implementation? What positive changes in the participants' job performance could be attributed to the training program? So this is the link between learning and workplace performance. There are different ways of evaluating that. In a typical contact center environment, it's about uh, probably auditing the calls if it's a voice environment, or as simple as quality audits. And it can be also interviewing the team managers. Do you see there's an improvement, or there is certain shifts in the behavior of that trainees? And the last one is results, the effects on the business. So that's the impact. uh, though it's mentioned ROI here, not necessarily it's hugely ROI dependent, and that's where Philip's model comes in. But it's about the impact of the training program and the performance on the organization. So say, for example, if it's a sales team who does lead generation of a voice call, in that case, post the training, the level one would be a satisfaction survey, level two would be assessment, final assessment or certification, level three would be auditing the calls by QA and having interview with those team managers, and level four, the results would be whether we see an increase in sales or lead generation, right? And we can evaluate 4 weeks before the training, 4 weeks after, or 8 weeks. It depends. There are different school of thoughts on that, also based on the product life cycle. So that's pretty much on the 4 levels. Hope I did justice. But let's go to Philip's ROI and why it came in the first place. Kirkpatrick is there for quite some time. I might say, before I move on to ROI, while I was researching, there's a different school of thought, and of course, Donald Kirkpatrick's son, the Kirkpatrick partners. Oh my God, yeah, the Kirkpatrick partners. That's his website, and he came up with the new model, and where it starts actually with level four, because it says a lot of organization actually stops, and that is fact. I've seen in few companies earlier stops at level one and level two, and not necessarily everybody is successful till measuring level four. So in this new model, he actually suggests we should have level four, the business outcome defined first, and then we move backward. So that's an interesting study, just a cue in case you want to research more. Phillips ROI model. So this is one of the most frequently quoted aspects. And what is the quoted aspect? It's actually it was built on the Kirkpatrick model, and it adds a fifth level or a layer that's to do with specifically ROI, or return on investment. So the model states that after determining a learning program's business impact, we can translate that impact into monetary terms and compare it to total cost of the program. Now, this cost include program development and delivery plus labor cost of time of learners. So I'll give one example. I mean, two examples, let's take. So I'm part of a training function in a big company. And if I want to plan and refresh a training, I have to take the representatives out of their production floor. So that has an impact, right? So whatever, 2-3 hours of investment per week. So that has a cost impact, because those 2-3 hours they are not able to do their day job. Apart from that, there is also the other perspective, is whatever content that I'm developing, or there is a man hour built for me as a trainer. And if you look in a wider scale, if I run a training organization, I'm an entrepreneur. So I go and give trainings to different companies. They will hire me, and of course there is a lot of program cost involved, including my fees, my stay in the hotel, that particular hotel, the fees, and the conference room charges, including getting those employees out for that 1 day session. So these are huge cost of a training program. is it giving a particular value? And we'll come to that in the next slide. I tried to input one video which is a relevant one from actually Mr. Phillips. It was meant for the ATD space, so it's quite relevant. And you guys also not get bored out of my monotonous voice. So let's go to that. But before that, just this is the pillar. And if you see the remaining four pillars are exactly the same, you see a fifth pillar on the top of the pyramid. That's about training investment and the ROI percentage. So if you see the percentage, it's like any profit percentage, the net project benefits by project cost into 100. That's the percentage. Let's go to the video, and I hope it plays properly.
ROI is the ultimate accountability to measure the return on investing in learning and development. These days, so many executives and leaders and sponsors of learning and development really want to know the value. You know, what value does it bring? Because we spend so much money on it. So this is a process that shows you how to measure your success. One level at a time, all the way up to ROI. We start with measuring reaction, and measure learning, and then application and impact, and the financial ROI. That's for the executives primarily. They want to see that these days. This is ideal for the learning manager, the learning leader, or someone who organizes, designs learning and development. It's anyone in the process who really wants to know, how do you measure the success? But particularly the learning leaders, because they will have to implement this and support this and guide this through the organization as they begin to change some of the things they're doing now. You learn quickly the different levels of evaluation, from reaction to learning to application to impact and ROI. We also see how this is collected. Data is collected and analyzed all the way up through the ROI, following a systematic model. Now this model is a great takeaway. It's a job aid, 10 steps to get to the ROI. That becomes a great job aid to use. We see people using that, putting it, actually framing it sometimes in their office and using it regularly in the discussion. We also give them a set of standards. The standards are the guiding principles for this process, and they enable you to do it consistently each time, but it's conservative. So the outcome of this, the outcomes from this process are very CEO and CFO friendly. So we want to make sure you know how to do it, know how to defend it, know how to report it. So you'll know how to do it, and you've got great tools to support it when you get back.
Well, that was the short video, and the 10-step process that he mentioned is actually here on the bottom. I'm not going to go through in details. It kind of like builds on to whatever we discussed. And anyways, as I said, I'm going to share the slide, so you might want to refer to that. This has been taken from the Phillips ROI Institute. So yeah, there's a website for that. Just thought of giving the credit. Let's go to Brinkerhoff's success case method. And again, sorry for my pronunciation if I'm doing it incorrectly. But yeah, this is something like this. There's a few things I never knew. Kirkpatrick, I probably knew. Phillips Arrow, I heard. But this, I did a little bit of research. And so how is this success case method, or SCM as it's popularly called, is different? So it's a qualitative model based on analysis of extreme groups, successful and unsuccessful adopters. So this model is actually designed to examine training outcomes broadly. Now, as opposed to the formative ones of the previous one. Let me give a wonderful example, and this while I was researching. So the success case methods actually discusses more on there will be a lot of more factors which is involved in determining whether the program is successful, and that not necessarily is only on the training event. So there's an example which was given. I found it very funny and like properly relevant. So this method actually says the success of a marriage, or the success of a the entire wedding, does not depend on the wedding day itself. So there are a lot more factors to that. Not sure how you found it funny, but I found it quite interesting actually. So this particular model, as I said, uh, this is based on 5 steps. It focuses on and planning the study, clearly defining what outcomes will be considered success, identifying success cases, conducting interviews, and communicating results to the organization. I said this is based on two extreme groups. It's like they take the top performers and the bottom performers. There's no room for average performers for this particular method. And what they do, of course. Uh, so how the process happens, there is a random sample selected post the training. Of course, for the successful candidates who has been successful in their job post the training, the questioning comes as like what was used from the training, when and how, where and why. And this is an interview sampling method. And for successful candidates, this particular method also asks what results were accomplished and the value, so assigning a value. For unsuccessful candidates, so that's the other part, so what are the environmental factors which prevented them from becoming where they wanted to post the training, and what are the barriers? So it's like begins with a self-evaluation survey that focuses on the level of using a new method and tools for training. How well did the training work? Now, post the interview, there is an evaluation results, and it gets feedback to two different functions. To the management, the feedback based on the evaluation post the interview, to the management, the feedback gives or given is how much and how well is learning applied, how effective is the performance, what obstacles and factors impede or enhance performance, what are managers doing that is working. So this is a feedback based on the SCM evaluation results post interview of both successful and unsuccessful. This is the feedback given to management. To the training function, the feedback is given how much learning is being achieved, how closely is learning linked to business and performance needs, how well is training integrated with other performance system and factors, and how can learning designs be improved. So it's a, as you can imagine, it's a very broad perspective. And this is the method. So in other words, the success case method does not make the same assumptions other performance system makes. It focuses on thinking, learning, and performance are tied. So yeah, that's pretty much. There are a lot of like pros, but there are a lot of cons, or there are a lot of criticism of the method also in few aspects. So that's about SCM. I think I forgot to change the slide, but this is exactly what I've discussed. And as you can see, it's the survey identify the most and the least successful trainees, the who and the what, the conduct in-depth interviews with selected samples, how and why. And those are the questions I told you, like we can share. I have made the sufficient notes, so I can share that also as a job aids. And those are the benefits and applications, evidence of training results, real examples of successful application, and then how it can improve and show managers. As I said, it gives feedback on the evaluation results to both the training function as well as the management, and how we can improve. The last but not the least is very important, balance scorecard. Now this is very interesting, and this is not specifically only related to training. It's a widely accepted business model. And as you can imagine by the word balanced, it tries to balance both the financial aspect as well as the non-financial aspect. And I tried to do justice based on like the four aspects, and there are different ways of looking at it. But yeah, to put it simple, it has four quadrants, so to say. So one is customer perspective, one is innovation, one is internal business, and last comes financial perspective. So as I said, not necessarily every training or anything is only or should be only tied to the financial aspect. So there are financial as well as non-financial perspective. So the first one, customer perspective. Did the solution or the initiative meet the customer needs or expectation? And the KPIs I tried to determine on the bottom. So KPI, as we all know, key performance indicators. So for customer perspective, the KPIs that you can understand is through customer satisfaction and customer retention. So did the entire program achieve the customer perspective? That's the last evaluation methodology that we are going to discuss of balanced scorecard. The next one is innovation and learning perspectives. Did it improve the employee skills? Did it improve the employee retention? Did it improve the employee satisfaction? And I was reading somewhere like um, most of the companies in today's world is spending 85% of their entire like money on people. It can be based on salary, based on training program. Not necessarily everybody is measuring it properly. So that's a huge area of investment. And in times like that, when a big company tries to shun off budget and cost cutting, if we have a wonderful training program with a proper evaluation mechanism and prove it with results, chances are that program will not be cut, and probably we'll try to see some other ways. So the second one, innovation and learning perspective, did the users gain the needed skills and knowledge? The third perspective is internal business perspective. This comes more on the quality control part. So the product lead time rather, sorry. Is there a too much delay from the product conception to delivery? So is the quality control is happening properly? As you see, the question says, did the solution initiative or practice have an effect on the job? And the last one is, of course, the financial perspective, the ROI. Did the revenue increase? How about the expenses? What about the return on investment? What about the net income? So those are the KPIs of balance scorecard. And as the word balance suggests, it tries to balance between financial and non-financial perspective. These are the four major areas: the customer, learning, internal business, and financial. So with this, I kind of end this first session. Hope I was not boring, and sorry for the long video. If I would have time, I would have actually broken it into different models. But this is my first attempt. But thank you so much for patiently hearing if you have gone this far. And all the best.